not a single statement of truth. We were hoping to be told that some of the worst things have been happening in the allocation of national highways. Even the culprits are not being allowed to be interrogated. But you use the agency, that's your only positive, against opposition governments, opposition leaders. What is the kind of drift in this government that we expect them to really solve the problem of price rise and inflation? We earlier used to speak in terms of alternative power centers within the UPA. Well, that was a criticism which is now becoming an old one. Almost every ally is becoming a power center. Somebody sits in Kolkata, you can't discipline them. Somebody sits in Chennai and therefore that's an island of governance itself. You can't interfere in those ministries. If this is what is happening to this government, in debate after debate, do we seriously expect the government to come and make a resolution as far as price rise is concerned? The minister responsible for building highways is at war with the Planning Commission. The rest of the government is busy giving a drubbing to the Home Minister. The Environment Minister is stalling the project of every other ministry. And we all become silent spectators. The Prime Minister is a spectator when this is going on. What do we really expect this government to do? So, containing inflation or reducing the prices for this government is like a mirage. It's like a drive through a desert. They tell you 2 more months and the prices will moderate, and then you see at the end of your drive, the distance gets further and further down. When the debates go on, what are we told? Well, we had a bad season. Last year, there was a drought in some parts of the country. And therefore, the food grain supplies, the food grain production itself went down, and therefore prices of food grain itself got affected. Then we are told the global prices have skyrocketed. Well, the international oil prices have gone out of control. Look at the rest of the world, what seems to be happening. And each excuse or an alibi, it's a government of alibis. But no alibi is a substitute really for the tears and the hunger of the common man, of the poor people. You had buffer stocks as far as your shortages are concerned. You had a huge amount of buffer stock. In fact, your buffer stock, as per your economic survey earlier this year, was far more than your normal requirements. How did you manage it? Was it this kind of carelessness as far as the government is concerned, that you had a buffer stock, you had a shortage in production, and yet you have food grain rotting? One figure the government mentioned, I saw, was 61,000 metric tons. It's an understatement of what is rotting outside. But that food grain is rotting. People are going hungry, and because of shortage, the food grain prices are moving up. It's a kind of a callousness and irresponsibility almost unmatched in history. For a government which wants, and we are all anxiously awaiting for the Food Security Act, is this the kind of food management today that we expect from this government? Let's come to their first reason. What is the global trend in inflation today? The global trend in inflation is that prior to 2008, several countries saw, before the slowdown, a double-digit inflation. At that time, we were comfortably placed at about 7.2%. Today, if you look at the figures, food inflation in similarly placed economies. Brazil is now down to 6%, Sri Lanka 2%, China 1%, and we went up climbing to almost 23% and are now coming down. That is as far as the global figures are concerned. in a situation of this kind, if you see as far as the inflation figures are concerned, look at how similarly placed economies, the only satisfaction we may get and say Pakistan has a higher inflation than us. But except that, Bangladesh is lesser, Malaysia 1.61%. Look at the Asian economies. Thailand 3.34, Indonesia 5.05, Philippines 4.28, China 3.10. Aren't these affected by the global process? The same factors apply to them that are continuing to apply to us. And then we are now being told that, well, the world situation is bad and therefore food prices in India are at this kind of a situation. Well, the global oil prices went up. This whole issue of the oil prices has been repeatedly raised. Well, in the last 1 year, oil prices have been between $70 to $79 per barrel. Now, the variation as far as the global prices is concerned is $2–3. Up and down they go. You've had a huge increase. And every time we are told, well, either we make the oil companies sick, or the government continues to subsidize this, the government can't continue to bleed, the oil companies can't continue to bleed. But the truth of the matter is that a very large part that the Indian consumer is today paying is really the taxes to various governments. You have customs duty, you have excise duty, you have state level taxes. And if you look around, what are the kind of prices that similar countries are paying? China pays a little over rupees 31 per litre for petroleum. Malaysia 25, Pakistan 44. Because their levels of taxation are entirely different. Your oil companies have all made profit. Now the argument is they've made profit because the government subsidized them. Yes, the government subsidized them. But if your total taxation, center and state, is between 50 to 55% depending on what the state taxes in a given state are, then the volume of what you are collecting from the consumer is today almost twice as much as what you are subsidizing the oil company itself. If your subsidy to the oil company is 53,000 crores, then what are you collecting from the consumer by way of taxes in these three categories? Last year it was between 84,000 to 90,000 crores. This year it's likely to be 1,20,000 crores. So you collect 1,20,000 crores from the companies, you subsidize them to the extent of 53,000 crores, and you say they are surviving only on account of my subsidy. What would any country have done under these circumstances? Your entire fiscal policy, taxation policy with regard to petrol products, whether it's diesel or other petrol products, is that you have an ad valorem rate of duty. So every time the prices go up, the quantum of taxation also goes up. So if you are collecting 51% from a consumer in a given state, that 51% will also go up depending on the value of the oil, the crude oil going up. Therefore, if the value itself is 22, 23 rupees, the crude oil value in what we pay is 22, 23 rupees to a litre, the rest we are paying as taxes. Now, India 51%. Look at what our neighbors charge. Pakistan total tax 30%. This is petroleum, petrol. Sri Lanka 37%. Diesel, India 30%. Countries are charging 15%. Pakistan is charging 15%. Therefore, you charge higher taxes. Now, the simple policy is if the prices go up, and the prices in the last 1 year haven't risen to the extent that you thought prices would rise, because they've remained in that $75 to $80 bracket. then any increase in price at least have a revenue neutral policy as far as your taxes are concerned. Therefore, irrespective of the oscillating prices, my revenue will remain the same as far as oil is concerned, and the burden on the Commonwealth will be offset against that. But we don't do it, and therefore you have a situation where prices across the world in most similarly placed economies are not to the extent of what we think that they are. Now this year we hope because of a good monsoon we'll have a bumper harvest. But the problem will be where to store this. We are now told, and that's a routine explanation being given, well, we have increased the minimum support price as far as the farmer is concerned, and the moment we increase the minimum support price, the effect of that increase in the minimum support price is that the prices to the consumers are naturally bound to go up. So this is half true. And this is half true for the reason that one of the rationales for increasing the MSP is the farmer gets more. And the moment the farmer is incentivized for a particular crop, the farmer then starts producing more of that crop. Because if last year sugar, अगर पिछले साल गन्ने की कीमत ज्यादा थी और उसका दाम ज्यादा मिल रहा था, तो किसान ज्यादा गन्ना प्रोड्यूस करेगा. And the rationale behind the increase of the MSP is that you increase the MSP, the farmer gets more, production increases because that crop is incentivized, and in the long run, that takes care and levels the prices down. So you refer to the first part of your argument besides relating that the long-term effect of the MSP increase should be that the production in that crop has to increase and the prices have to level out. Now what seems to be happening is that your new problem is that instead of using your buffers for the consumer so that you can flatten the market a little, your buffer stocks are today lying, the FCI, I am told, has about a limited capacity. There is a pakka capacity. There are also areas where they cover it with plastic. And the third category is what is today lying in playgrounds, it is lying in the fields, it is lying in schools, it's lying in railway tracks, it is rotting. So the irony of India's economy is that you have a huge starvation amongst a particular section, and you also have the largest destruction of food grain because of bad management of the food grain economy. Now this is what seems to be happening as far as our food economy today is concerned. I have, sir, recently come across reports which have not been contradicted, that in some places, they said and they showed the visuals on television, that in an FCI go down in Jaipur, they found liquor stopped and food grain outside. In Kanpur, the food grain, I'm sure my friends from UP will try and verify and confirm this, that if this is there, set right this wrong. You have amongst the State Warehousing Corporation food grain outside, and the godowns have been let out to Pepsi and ITC because they gave higher rent. If this is how we are going to manage it, the food grain economy, then certainly we'll have a situation where the two principal contributors, food prices as also our oil prices, both are capable of adequate and proper management, so the consumer himself does not get burdened to the extent that he has been burdened today.